Hello, welcome to the Breathing Space Not Live. This is Kim Standyvan, myself, Morna Hayes is here with us as well. I'm so excited. We are recording for a very special reason, which we're going to get into. But first, the whole purpose of this is to give ourselves some space. So just invite you to take a moment wherever you are, whether you're standing or sitting, and just take a deep breath and arrive in the moment. I know I feel like I need this right now. How about you, Morna?
I just took my breath and yeah. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, I just need that to ground into the moment. And I think the reason why I've been feeling a little floaty is that there's been a lot going on for Morna and I over the last few days, especially. And so what we wanted to focus on in this show is about what season we're in. So that's the question that I'd like you to let into your body and just let it float around as we're discussing our own journeys of answering this question. And the pre-show show, which is where so much happens.
Which we actually, I think, need to record.
I think we talked about the internal versus external season. And we also wanted to acknowledge that some of our listeners are in a completely different season. We're currently in summer, and over in New Zealand, Australia is winter.
Moving into winter, and it's actually only just officially become summer here, right? Like it just in the last week, I think, and officially winter. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the question is, what season are you in? And I think today we really want to focus on that internal feeling of what season we're in. And on past shows, we talked about the groan zone. And Morna and I have really been feeling the groan zone over the last couple of days. But first, before I ask you some questions, Morna, I wanted to speak about what our intention is for the summer about breathing space and creating space, because we both acknowledged that we need some more space to process, to make sense of. And the only way that we feel that we can do this is to step back from the commitments that we've made and take that time. And so that's why these shows over the summer are going to be recorded. And we're totally at peace with that because we want to set an example for creating space and what that means and what boundaries we need to put up for ourselves. So our boundary is, hey, we're not going to go live this summer. We're going to do some recording. So that feels good. So Morna, I have a couple of questions for you about, what season are you in?
Okay,
That's a loaded question.
It's a big question. It's a big question. And actually what's coming up for me is just reflecting a little on last week. Last week we were talking about moving through challenging times, and I was reflecting last week on, I think, more of the personal landscape that I'm in with many different personal challenges happening at the same time. And then in the last week, Kim and I, as Kim kind of alluded to at the beginning, we've been really, I think, in a period of sense making, making sense of the experiments we've been running for the last year, both in our Life Design Lab and previous to that in another program called Wisdom Circles, and the other work we're doing in the world. And we've been in this kind of really intense period of sense making, making plans for the summer, making plans for next year. And I think all of this kind of personal stuff and work stuff for me has come together in this big smush, and often, I refer to that as the groan zone, and I know we've referred to that in other videos. And so it's interesting to kind of contrast that with the season that we're moving into here in North America, which is summer. And both my teenagers are home, which is not an unusual situation for me, but they're home, for the summer. And I want to create some space. And so there's this external season happening of summer, which, can often involve a little bit more playtime, getting outside. And then internally, I've got all of this stuff kind of working on me, so many open loops, so many things that I can't resolve easily or quickly. So I think the season that I'm in, to actually answer your question, and what I wrote down is that I'm in this kind of season of reflection, integration, sense making, also grief, for many, many different reasons. And what I really want to be able to do, and what I'm committed to, is creating space to experience those ways of being, and allow them to work on me. And really, we were talking about this morning, I want to shine a light on what I really need over this time.
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, and we wanted to have this conversation to give you insight into answering that question of what is it that you need, and how do you even know what you need, and what it actually, or how it shows up.
Oh, what a great question. How do you know what you need?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the training, right? I think that's why we're so passionate about this work, is that we're in this continuous training of identifying and articulating that question of what is it that I need, and how do I manifest it. So I think for me to answer that question, I'm in a similar place. I'm reflecting, I'm figuring out, I'm making sense of. And the grief thing is so interesting, because I would say I'm never out of grief. Like, ever.
Tell me
There's
more about
always
that. Say more
something.
about that.
Well, I think anyone that has lost someone that they care about, I've lost my dad, I've lost really important people in my life, my aunt, family members, friends over the years. And I think there's a level of grief that is always constant. And it's just a way of being. And I think it's really important to call that out, is like, I'm always in a period of grief, and it shows up at different times, like waves, and acknowledging and honoring that is just part of who I am now. It's just a part of who I am. And there's nothing wrong or nothing to fix or be wrong about that. It's to create space for that grief to show itself.
I think what you're saying is so beautiful, and also so, and maybe it's only me that feels like this, so contrary to how grief is presented in the kind of, the mainstream conversation about it, that it's some kind of process that you go through.
No, I really feel it as, it's not only just a death of like people, it's a death of ideas, it's a death of dreams, it's a death of careers, of grief is just everywhere in our life. And I want to just call it out as that's a big part of creating space, is allowing our bodies and our mind, body, and spirit to be with that, whatever's happening for us internally or externally. Because there's triggers, like there'll be things that trigger me. It's Father's Day last week. Hello. Yeah. That's a trigger, right? So it's it's really interesting to this was not part of the pre-show. Just came up, right? But I love that. It's creating space for integrating whatever's bubbling up for us in the moment. But let's kind of backtrack to that question of how do you process? Because we did bounce around a few ideas of what we're currently doing to process this groan zone we're in. Well,
let's talk about the groan zone for a minute. And I know that we've talked about this on and off in various shows, and something interesting that you asked me beforehand was, what does it feel like to be in the groan zone? How do we name it? And it can occur for many different reasons. And let's do another whole show on the groan zone, actually.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And when you're in it, and we can be in it individually, and we can be in it collectively as a society. And I think we absolutely are, actually, as a species right now, with the level of stuff that we're dealing with. It can feel uncomfortable. It feels confusing. You can feel it in your body. It can be challenging to make sense of things. You can feel that quality of grasping for something that's just out of reach. Out of reach, and you can't manufacture your way out of it. You can't, and it can be very tempting to do it, because we're not we're not really taught how to skillfully sit in this space as a natural part of the complexity of being human. You know, we're more, I think, geared towards wanting to feel great all the time, wanting to feel clear, wanting to be in the flow, you know, all of that stuff. And I'm not saying it ain't great to feel, to be in those spaces, but often we're not. So I think, and I think that the first thing is actually feeling a little more, this sounds ironic, I know, as I'm about to say this, feeling a bit more comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, what is it that you need to do? And actually, sometimes it's really important to stay in that space for long enough to receive the information that we need to receive, or the clarity, or whatever. And so, you know, what are some of the things we can do? And I know what's good for me. Creating space, getting into a bath is one of the things that I do. And I might spend a long time in the bath. Also,
like how long, Lorna?
Gonna out myself on the show.
Yeah. Like, what did you call it? You did call it?
Well, my husband laughingly refers to it as my second office, because, you know, it is. And it's interesting how the bath has evolved over the years. When my children were really small, the bath was my sacred kind of like, you hear the water running, the door's going to be shut, and the door's going to get locked, and, you know, I'm not available. Bye. And, you know, nowadays it's, you know, more for a different purpose. But I think for me, one of the reasons why the bath is so important, and I really do try to avoid bringing my devices. Actually, it's one of the reasons why I have a new phone, for one of the odd times that I did bring my device in and it ended up in the water. You know, it's a way of creating space where I'm not linked to these different anchors that we have so often. So I might be in the bath. We live on the side of a mountain, so I often go for hikes. But also I want to talk about, you know, those are kind of, I want to say, special activities that we can do. But we can also, and I often do this, we can create space in the moment we're in. So, for example, and I know that we talked about this on a previous show about like doing the dishes, doing things we have to do or during our day. There are also opportunities for giving our bodies and brains space to make sense of things if we're in the activity. Cleaning up is another thing I do. Clearing out an area is another thing I do. Well, how about you, Kim?
Yeah, all of those things. I think what's really crucial for me is to notice. And yesterday was a perfect example. So Morna and I are trying to make sense of, oh my gosh, it was crazy. And noticing what the universe is like presenting you, which is difficult to do in the moment. So Morna and I are trying to figure this stuff out, and it's not working, and every single interruption that could happen happens. Like, it's total chaos. We're kind of jumping in on the meetings and out and back in and out, and then eventually we're like, we just need to stop. Like, let's just stop. And I think making that declaration is so important, like noticing the chaos, noticing that it's not working, noticing that you're feeling scattered or discombobulated, and just stopping and like, okay, enough. This is where it ends, and I'm going to go tidy up a drawer. I'm going to go to the garden. I'm going to let what wants to happen internally or unconsciously. And so yesterday was a perfect example where we stopped. I started on just daily stuff, and I made an intention of like, okay, just show me when I'm ready. Show me what I need to know when I'm ready. And it was at 6:30 this morning. I got out of bed and it flowed out just magically. So I think if we give ourselves permission just to let things bubble up when they are ready to, rather than trying to force it. And that's why we need to create space for ourselves, because we can't force it. We can't make it happen or will it to happen.
Right. And I think that's so true of how we've constructed so much of our modern life around the idea that we're machines, really, that
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
producing machines that operate between 9 to 5 or whatever, and we
Mhm.
produce between these
Yeah.
in this way. And it's interesting actually that we constructed our modern kind of predominant way of working during the time of the Industrial Revolution, and during the time of mass mechanization, and attempting to do that with ourselves as well. Just even interesting, I was reading an article a couple of days ago on Thrive Global talking about sleep, and actually it was critiquing so many of the articles that pop up saying the most productive people in the world wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and do X, Y, Z, and actually showing what that does to us.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. And so, this is just a much bigger conversation. And I feel like so many of the issues we face as a species are around how we organize ourselves, how we organize our time. And, even you and I are talking about this with the various challenges that we both experience and our personal circumstances, and then navigating this kind of big work that we're doing in the world. And I think both of us have become really good at tiger time, or what we like to call tiger time. Do you want to say something about that? Because I actually think I'm an apprentice in tiger time. You're a master. So.
I didn't come up with that, so I'll give credit to Amy Porterfield, who's a marketing expert in the transformation space, and this is her term, tiger time. But I've kind of adopted it as, it's like I'm giving myself a chunk of half an hour, and I'm just focusing on that one task, and it's like boom, get it done. And I want to say that I have to be ready for tiger time too. It can't be forced. But it's just this intention of completing something, or if you want to be on social media, allowing yourself that 15 minutes, but only that 15 minutes, so that you don't go down these rabbit holes of hours and hours and hours. It's just it's an efficiency tool. So try it, tiger time. Like I do that with my house. I'm like, okay, I got half an hour. What can I accomplish in half an hour of tidying up or cleansing or decluttering?
I love that, and I just want to bring in a little bit of brain science into it, and how our bodies and brains respond in the way that we condition them. And so, if you are setting yourself up for distraction, if you're on social media, if you're, if you're going down those rabbit holes, if you're responding to every ding, you're creating powerful neural pathways, and actually you're getting a dopamine hit, which the research shows.
Absolutely.
You're getting an addictive hit. So I think in terms of bringing that into the conversation of what are you wiring yourself for, because you can wire yourself for tiger time as well. If you say, for example, I have my desk in a certain way, and when I'm going to do certain activities, I have certain things around me. I always get dressed, even though my bedroom is literally just down the hall from my workplace. I could be sitting here most of the time with not even clothes on, which wouldn't be great for these videos. But it's about really setting your brain up for what's about to happen. And now that's not always possible, but you can also create anchors. And I'd love to do a show on anchors. So where are we?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, I think it's time to wrap up, but I think this is a really great closing in this idea of creating space for ourselves and wiring that as an intention, as a belief system, as a practice that you want to bring forward in your life. It's like, I'm creating space for X, and what do I need in order to create that? What do I want to wire? What do I want to become a habit, a way of being? And that's why we really wanted to set an example for creating space for ourselves by doing recordings rather than live videos. So I guess my challenge to you, or my invitation to you, is what do you want to create space for this summer or this winter, wherever you are in the world? or winter, wherever you are in the world. So what do you want to create space for? And how, or what is it that you need in order to really anchor that for yourselves? How is it going to show up? Is it a bath? That's all I have to say. But Morna, maybe I'll just leave it for you for last thoughts.
My last thoughts are I'm already answering that question for myself, and just I think in closing, reflecting on the season you're in. And I think, as we said at the beginning, sometimes your internal season doesn't match the external season that you're in. So really pay attention to what you need, what's happening in your life, and what you want to create space for. What do you want to show up for this season?
Love that.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining us. Put some comments in, as we will be checking the stream and we'll be answering. So please let us know what you think. And we will see you next week for the breathing space. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.